So our goal as trainers is to help members stay in the studio as long as possible for many different reasons, not only for our studio, but also for their own health. A lot of people tend to back off and cancel their memberships, mostly because they don't really understand what is safe, or they're just nervous about how to work out during pregnancy. But our goal as trainers is to clarify what that might look like and make it easy for them to consume and stay healthy while they're in the studio with us. So I am Michelle, and I've been here 6+ years in Stamford. I also coach in the South Norwalk location in Connecticut. I've had 2 different pre-postnatal certifications. One is through Pronatal, which is a member of F45. So we have a partnership with them. So we have discounted rates as F45 coaches. So we can get those links out to you guys if you're interested in searching more about prenatal training in general. My second certification is through Core Exercise Solutions. And that was like a far deeper course, I should say. A lot of anatomy, help with form, especially if someone is having pain in different areas during pregnancy. And then I'm also a mom of 2. So I've taken what I've learned through my courses, applied it in my own pregnancies, and have grown so much, and now feel like as if I can coach to it adequately and help you guys coach as well. So exercise during pregnancy is actually so good for you, but mostly your baby's actually going to benefit, which is, I think, the coolest part. It's going to make for an easier labor. You need endurance to get through labor, whether you have medication or not. Labor is an endurance event. So if you're not working out, it is going to be a lot harder on your body and on your mind to be able to get through that. It makes your recovery even faster. So no matter how you actually ended up delivering, if you've torn, if you had a C-section, vaginal, whatever it might be, your recovery is going to be quicker as long as you are working out during pregnancy. You're trying to build up your muscles because 50% of our muscle mass is thought to disappear during pregnancy because of different reasons, including not working out, but also just the stresses on our body. So we're actually losing muscle during pregnancy and a whole lot during that early postpartum phase. So we really want to build up those muscles for those mamas and help them recover quicker. And then also motherhood is extremely physically demanding. And I had no idea how demanding it was until I had some kids of my own. And it just takes a whole lot out of you. I mean, you're carrying a baby, even if they're like 7 pounds, you're carrying them around for multiple hours at a day. I like to think of it like you're holding an isometric bicep hold for hours on end, or you're having like a weighted vest on you. Okay? Like that takes a toll on your body. And we want to help those mothers be able to train for that so that they can feel confident in their, especially their early postpartum phase. Obviously, it helps with excessive weight gain, some pregnancy-related diseases. It helps improve bodily functions like sleep, helps you manage stress, helps you go to the bathroom, which tends to be an issue during pregnancy, and it also benefits your baby. So it actually helps their ability to handle the labor themselves. So babies actually undergo a lot of heart rate fluctuations, and they have like an endurance event themselves to get out of the mama. So it's actually really good for the baby for that. It also improves circulation in the placenta, and it improves their neuromuscular health and levels, which is pretty cool. So there's a lot of research out there to show that babies of mothers who've worked out throughout their pregnancy have a higher IQ, which is like, that's pretty cool. All right. So quick going into pregnancy myths and research. Number 1 is what I always hear and what my doctor actually told me herself. She's pretty old and her, I guess, education hasn't really kept up with the latest research. And that is that your heart rate can't go above 140 beats per minute. And there's so many reasons why your heart rate does fluctuate. So stress induces heart rate fluctuations, your hormones. So what we want to do instead of thinking about our heart rate as our level that you can't go above or can't breach, we need to think of it as a rate of perceived exertion. So this is what the OCG, which is College of Obstetricians, the healthiest research since 1991 is that you use your rate of perceived exertion. So if you are on a scale of a 1 to a 10, you really need to stay between a 6 to an 8 on that scale. A 1, think about as like a really casual walking pace, and a 10 is like your sprint, like your all out effort pace. What would that be on that scale if you stay between a 6 to an 8? So some days your 6 to an 8 level, like 60 to 80% of your exertion level, is going to be feeling like I'm feeling with like a 5-pound bicep curl. And some other days it's going to be like, I feel so good. I can hit like 15, 20 pounds on my bicep curls. It really just depends on the day. So encouraging members to use the rate of perceived exertion scales in their mindset as they go throughout class, as they go throughout different exercises, different workout styles that we have, whether it's our HIIT days, our cardio days, or our strength days. You can ask members when they walk in the studio and you just say, hey, like, how do you feel today? And what do you feel like you can give today? Sometimes they're going to be like, I can only give 30%, or it feels like their normal 30%, but it's really that upper level for them based on, sleep or hormones. The next one is lifting 25 pounds, or you can't lift more than 25 pounds. And that's all so false because it totally varies per person. So someone who is brand new to exercise or does not have a lot of strength probably won't be able to lift a whole lot of weight, but someone who deadlifts over 100 pounds, like there's no real reason that they shouldn't continue to be able to use that same weight that they had their entire pregnancy. The only thing is that they will feel more stress during those strength training or lifting days. You probably have gained in that third trimester up to 25 pounds. So you have that extra weight on you rather than in front of you in a dumbbell or a ball. So just keep that in mind as you encourage members how to lift well, but they can lift heavy. You still want to try and use that rate of perceived exertion scale and try not to go super high above that. That 10 is really like your 1 rep max. So you can go pretty close to that, which is pretty crazy all throughout pregnancy, and it's totally fine for you. Core work, we are supposed to do core work. It's just, we have to be very careful with it and very intentional with how we use our core, but it's going to help prevent back pain, which is one of the biggest reasons that people complain during pregnancy, is that their low back is absolutely killing them. Your back undergoes a whole lot of stress and pressure as your weight moves out and down in your belly. So it changes where you're holding all of that weight and holding your posture. And so that low back really takes a big toll, and your mid back actually loses mobility throughout a lot of pregnancy. So we want to be able to work our core to improve our posture and help our back. And then keep doing what you're doing. That's so false as well, because say someone never worked out a day in their life and they're like, where do I start? I'm pregnant, but I want to be healthy. They can start from square one. They can start going on those walks. They can start lifting small weights for a short amount of time. Like, you just want to build your way up. So I would not encourage someone who've never worked out in the studio before to go into a full workout and try and go at their maximum effort, or even a 6 to an 8. I would say, like, go very light and then you build your way up, but we can take you there throughout these classes. And our job as coaches is to be very personalized. So if you see someone who's pregnant or is nervous about starting out, just like a new trial member, just like someone who's brand new, you treat them the same. You meet them where they are in the studio and you encourage them to scale up where they can and take it easy where they need to. And then modifying exercises at the start of each trimester. This is something that is kind of confusing, because if you have done research during pregnancy, it says first trimester, these are the exercises you can do, and this is where you can't. Second trimester, these are what you can and can't do. And then third, these are what you can and can't do. But it really isn't that black and white. So it totally varies person to person, even pregnancy to even my first pregnancy to my second pregnancy. I noticed that I had to modify different exercises at different stages of my pregnancy based on how I was able to handle my core pressure and be able to engage my core properly throughout exercise. So it isn't as black and white, but I do break it down in our next session a little bit more roughly trimester to trimester, but there is some gray in between each. Okay, so when we're communicating with members pre and postnatal, we want to ask a variety of questions. I love when Our managers are able to ask questions over text or over email before a member comes in, or when a member indicates to us, hey, I'm pregnant, what do I do? So some of the questions we need to ask are you approved by your doctor to work out? Are you being hydrated and fueled? This is one of the questions you can ask before someone comes in, or just making sure that they're feeling okay. And that also fluctuates their rate of perceived exertion per the day. How far along are you? This is helpful for you as a coach to be able to say, I have roughly an idea of what you probably can and can't do based on what you'll learn with me and the modifications that we'll need. And then any pain or pressure or tightness, pain and pressure, especially down in your pelvic floor, is not healthy. Most people just think that's normal. It's not. That usually is an indication that we're unable to manage our core pressure. If you're unable to manage your core pressure, it puts a lot of pressure down on your pelvic floor, which can lead to a bunch of pelvic floor complications later on, like leaking. It can be really painful, and there's a lot of postpartum things that go along with that. So we want to make sure that they're not feeling pain or pressure down in their pelvic floor or out in their core, just a healthy amount in their core, like muscles that they're working. As their belly expands, it is going to put extra pressure on those core muscles. So that's pretty natural. But also tightness. Tightness can actually be an indication that someone is hypermobile, which is very common during pregnancy, especially if anyone has ever done a lot of yoga or gymnastics in the past. That actually means that usually your body's too mobile, and your hormones during pregnancy make you more mobile to move your hips so you can get baby out later. But that can indicate also tightness. So your body's really trying to overcompensate and tighten up those areas. So we actually need to strengthen those areas. A lot of times you'll see it in the hip or the outer glute. And have you exercised in the past? A lot of times people are not sure where to start, and you're here to help them just like any other member. You listen, make sure they're listening to their body, their own personal cues, but you want to also challenge them to not quit, make sure you're guiding them, giving them modifications, reducing weight if needed, reducing intensity if needed. But do want to say, I want to safely encourage you and challenge you. So I love telling members, like, if you're feeling like I'm putting too much pressure for you to move too fast and you're not feeling it, let me know. Like, I want to help you. And a lot of members, I feel like, are at that level where they're like, I just want to keep going and I need someone to kick my butt because I won't do it on my own at home. And then also in the beginning of class, I love saying, I will give you some modifications throughout class today. These are not because you aren't strong enough, but because it's going to be healthier and safer for you and your baby. So just preface that as you go into you communicating with members through their pregnancy, no matter when they really came in to class or not. Before your workout, as a coach, I want you to look around the studio and look at the different exercises that you feel as if members would need to modify. Usually planks will need to elevate into an incline position. We add bands and maybe a different set of dumbbells if needed at different stations to help members be safe during their workouts. And if I know a pregnant member is going to be in my class, I go around and bring those couple different pieces of equipment to that station so that they have it right when they get to that station. And then I can just run over and explain what that modification might be with your extra equipment if you aren't able to do it at the beginning of class. If there are multiple pregnant women in class, you might want to just say it over the mic. So you can say, if you're pregnant or need to modify, here are some of the XYZ modifications we can use for this exercise. And you can say, these are the set of extra equipment that are at this station for you if you need that. And then during class, this is super important, is to make sure that we are teaching how to engage your core properly for the pregnant woman, but also for anyone in general in the studio. And it wasn't until pregnancy that I realized how important and how kind of incorrect I was breathing and engaging my core before I got pregnant. And then I learned a whole lot, and now I can apply it afterwards. And it's totally transformed my core, but also my exercise. So it's huge to be able to engage your core. And then also reset members. Make sure, like, if they're in the middle of an exercise and you see any coning, which I'll show you in a second what that looks like, we want to be able to say, reset your body, re-engage your core, and then we go back into the exercise. Don't be afraid to reset members to stage one. Even if it's like a bent over row and you see a lot of curve in their spine, what do? You tell them to stand up tall, reset, and then you hinge back over into that position. Okay, core pelvic floor basic. So this is what diastole diastasis recti looks like. This is a natural separation of your abs during pregnancy. So as your belly is going to grow, your six-pack ab muscles, that rectus, is going to move outward to make room for your baby. This is something that happens in, they say, 99% of pregnancies by the end now. So it's not something to be super scared of, but it's something to be aware of. So your linea alba runs down lengthwise in the middle, and that's a tendon throughout your core. And then your transverse abs, you'll see them, they wrap around from the back of your spine all the way in towards the front into that straight line linea alba down the middle. And when we're engaging our core, it's literally wrapping the back muscles all the way around towards the front is what that's going to look like. So this is what coning looks like, especially during pregnancy. Your belly is coming to a point a little bit. You can see this not in pregnancy. I see it a lot in men. So it does not mean that only women experience coning, but this is an indication that you're unable to manage your intra-abdominal pressure during certain exercises. Not only core exercises, you can see this, but you can also see this with deadlifts. You can see it with ski erg. So it's more than just core, that you need to be aware of this position. As a coach, you want to be able to coach them through it, but also you want to be able to learn it for yourself so that you can engage your core properly. So pelvic floor basics, men also have a pelvic floor. I feel like that's something that like a lot of people don't know, but you do. It's the bottom of your core canister. So your core is right around your rib cage, your upper abs, all the way down your transverse abs, your rectus abdominis, and then it finishes at your pelvic floor. So women have 4 points to your pelvic floor. You have your pubic bone, your tailbone, and then your 2 sits bones. So if you're sitting on your hands and you reach your hands underneath your butt, you're going to feel the 2 bony parts underneath. Those are your sits bones. So those are 4 points of your pelvic floor. And when we're engaging our core, it starts with our pelvic floor. It's not just squeezing our abs together, but it really lifts from the lowest part of our core canister, that pelvic floor. And we want to think about bringing all 4 points up at the same time as we go into our core engagement. So some things we just want to be aware of is coning. So you saw what that looked like. Any leaking. So if someone's like peeing during class, that's a good sign that their pelvic floor is probably mismanaged in your pressure, and we need to help with that. Any pressure, heaviness in that pelvic floor region as well, or any back pain. Those are like some indications that we need to help members modify even more, and they might be pushing themselves in ways that they weren't aware that they need to scale back. Okay, so proper breathing. So when you're inhaling air through your mouth down into your lungs. Your lungs expand from the top all the way down. So as you inhale, your lungs expand, and you want to think about your ribs expanding 360 degrees. So if you were to put your arms around your rib cage as you inhale, your arms should start here, and you inhale to expand them all 4 directions, backwards, forwards, and towards the side. So if you're here, you're inhaling, expanding your rib cage. The most common thing I see is people raise their shoulders instead of expanding your rib cage. So your shoulders rise just the tiniest bit expansion of your belly, but it's mostly your rib cage expanding. And then on the exhale, you're actually going to contract your pelvic floor. That bottom of your core canister lifts first, and that's going to light up your lower abs all the way up to your upper abs. And it should be nice and fluid. It shouldn't be like a big squeeze. It should be a slight lift. So slightly lift your low pelvic floor, low abs, all the way up to your upper abs in that order. As we expand our rib cage, our belly button in pregnancy is actually going to slowly lift with it and come all the way up to our upper abs or towards our rib cage. So that is a good indication if you see someone pregnant working out with you, that you want to encourage them to hug your baby in from as low as they possibly can, so that pelvic floor all the way up, and you should see their belly button rise. If they're wearing a sports bra, it's great. And so it's a really good indication that like these people are probably engaging their core correctly. So one easy way, I'll just show you real quick what it might look like. So if you're lying on your back, you're going to put your hands right inside your hip crease right here. So a little bit lower than your actual hips. It's right below them in here. As you inhale, you expand your rib cage. Your rib cage is going up to the sides and back down towards the ground. Big inhale. Exhale, you lift your pelvic floor first. So think about like a very slight squeeze in your pelvic floor, but also the tiniest squeeze in your glutes as well. And then at the very top of that pelvic floor lift, you should feel pressure
pushing out on those fingertips, that's a good indication that you're engaging your low abs, those transverse abdominis that wraps all the way down here first. So you're going to lift your pelvic floor, engage your low abs on that exhale. So you're like scooping, think about scooping the breath from your pelvic floor out from the bottom of your lungs all the way back out your mouth. So again, if you put your fingertips here on the exhale, you should feel your low abs, push those fingertips out a little bit. And that's something that you can practice at home and really determine if you are actually engaging those low abs properly or not, because low abs are one of the things that is probably the hardest to feel on your own. Some cues that we can use during pregnancy: lift your pelvic floor first, like I just said. So I like to say, put your hands on your hips and bring them together. This is another way to say like you're buckling your belt of your jeans. You're trying to pull your hip bones in towards each other. So it's going to wrap your transverse from the back all the way in. And then think about your hip bones coming from here. You're going to rise them up towards your belly button, almost like a triangle or an upside down V. That's the movement that we want. Inhale big. At the very top, your belly button will lift a little bit. So you bring your hip bones together and up and in. Another thing you can say is to hug your baby in and up. So think about like low to high. Your belly should move with you. Your belly button should come up with you. And it is not, I feel like a lot of women are like scared to brace their core because they're like, oh, my baby's going to be squished. It will never be squished in your belly. You will never be able to do that too much. You engage and lift your belly from those low abs all the way up to your upper abs, like you're hugging your baby in and making it nice and comforted inside of your core. So this is my pregnant belly right now. It's going to pull your body down and out. So it puts a lot of pressure on your low abs, and you'll notice a big curve in most pregnant women's spines back here. We want to tuck our hips under 1 or 2 inches so it engages our low abs. It encourages that engagement. So you can lift your belly a little bit higher, but it helps your abs kind of turn on, especially those low ones. A couple cues to avoid: don't bring your belly button to your spine. I despise that cue. And that's something that I feel like a lot of coaches say is, let's tuck your belly button in, bring it in, suck it in. If you're sucking in your belly button, you are gripping your upper abs, putting a whole lot of pressure down on your pelvic floor, which we want to prevent, but it's also putting like a pooch out in your low abs because you're not engaging your low abs when you're sucking in your belly button. So don't say belly button to spine. Don't say suck in. Don't say squeeze everything tight, because if we're just squeezing everything tight, it actually puts pressure down on your low abs into your pelvic floor. And we don't want to just flex, because that does the same thing. We want to be able to say, hug your baby in. Think about bringing your hip bones together and upwards into that triangle position. Engage from your pelvic floor all the way up as you exhale. So very big inhale, and then exhale, you engage and lift your pelvic floor. Couple quick basic modifications that we can use. Avoid being on your stomach. Sometimes we're on the bench, even lying on our stomach. We want to avoid that just to protect your fetus, no matter what stage of pregnancy. So that's usually one of the indications in my mind that, like, if someone didn't tell me that they were pregnant, but has seen a workshop that I've done, they're probably pregnant if they're not lying on their stomach. But we want to encourage no stomach lying from here on out. We don't want to overstretch. Again, your hormones are actually going to encourage mobility in your ligaments and your joints. And if we are overstretching or overextending too much, or like an up dog or a cobra pose, it's going to push our core out even more and extend that diastasis, that separation of our abs, more than we actually need. Very slight, like instead of a full up dog, you want to come in just like almost lower than that tabletop position, just to stretch your core a little bit without overextending it. Same thing goes for normal stretching in hamstrings, quads, whatever it might look like. You want to avoid that overstretch, because you can actually overstretch your ligaments more than you think. Modifications for HIIT exercises: easiest thing for jumps, instead of jumps, you can come up into like a squat with a calf raise at the top. For boxes, you can step on, step off, like some of the normal modifications we would use for any other member in class. Kettlebell swings, you can do kettlebell swings most of your pregnancy. I would say 3rd trimester, it gets a little iffy, because it actually is a lot of pressure on your core without you knowing it. And your belly kind of gets in the way of form as well. So you can do like an upright row or a deadlift for those. Core exercises, what we'll do instead of planks is an incline position. So on a bench, you can take things into a tabletop. You can do a lot of standing positions. So driving one knee up at a time, like almost like a high knee. You can have a single dumbbell up overhead with a high knee.
We can do a lot of seated positions as well, but I would not recommend full plank position at 20 weeks on. That's usually a good indication it's going to be a little bit too much, whether the person knows it or not, just because in the length of exercise at F45 and the minimal amount of rest during most sets, a lot of core is going to be stressed in a healthy way, but also a good sign that we need to back off a little bit sooner than someone might need to at home if they're just doing a big rest period in between some core exercises. Bent over rows or bent over flies, anything bent over in that third trimester, your belly's pushing too much pressure down and out. So instead of bent over, come into a staggered stance. You can come one hand on a box and hit a single side row. Anything just to support your core and your low back a little bit more in that stance is going to be helpful. Side planks are great. You might need to come onto your knees. So like a supported side plank, depending on how someone can engage their pelvic floor and their core. You will see coning and it'll come a little bit to the side. So like down towards the ground a little bit more, but you could still see that coning. So that's a good indication that they need to take it from their knees, but can still work a side plank. We don't want to do a whole lot of rotation. You can do thread the needle in more of a stretch, but not as much in like actual strength training. It's just going to it's going to put too much pressure on your core in that way. An appropriate incline, great question. So I would say a bench is probably the lowest you would want to go in an incline. If they're second trimester, early second trimester, I would say the lowest red box is probably fine. They could even take it from their knees and still work that red box incline. It really depends on the member and their stage of pregnancy and how they're able to manage their core. But the highest box recommended in that third trimester for, I would say, the vast majority of pregnancies, if not the bench or higher.
Michelle, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're looking around the room at the exercises for the day, and you would bring dumbbells.
Yes.
For certain stations. Can you give me an example of that?
Yes, absolutely. So, barbell exercises, we're doing an upright row, your belly's probably going to get in the way and it's going to compromise your form. So if you're trying to do an upright row, your arms are going to be too far out in front of you. So a dumbbell separates that weight so you can get your belly in between those weights. Some other things, it's just like easier to hold dumbbells than say a core ball or a dead ball, especially at your chest. You can hold dumbbells at your side. So if you're doing like a dead ball, bent over row or bent over good morning and it's at your chest, it might be easier to have it at your sides. It's going to distribute the weight a little bit differently and put less pressure on that low back if you hold them a little bit lower. So some dumbbell exercises, those are like some ones off the top of my head that I would use dumbbells instead of certain equipment in the studio. So if you're working core and you're like, there's only a mat on the ground, like what do I do? This is my dumbbell. You're having a single dumbbell up overhead and you're doing single leg raises, trying to keep your torso in one line so the weight isn't pulling you to either side and your body's not pulling you to side, but your hips are as flat as possible, parallel towards the ground as you raise your legs. That's a great one that you could use for a dumbbell instead of like just a regular matted core exercise. So I'd bring a dumbbell to that station if it wasn't there already.
So like we don't do push-ups, we get the red bands out and let them do presses with the red bands. And then we try to limit the use of the sandbags with pregnant ladies also. Same reason for the barbells. We put out weights and we use the standing marches all the time with the weight overhead. And then if there's leg raises, we do like the toy soldier where you're standing up and you're kicking one leg back and forth.
So I give them like 3 or 4 go-tos. I take the time before, after class to show them how to do them, give them some practice at home, tell them to practice at home. And like, that's what they go do in the studio. Like a dead bug is a great one. Or a bird dog.
Yeah, bird dog. Awesome. F45 Academy now has, 1 or 2 pregnancy webinars. They have great modifications. And then my goal is to give you even more ammo for you to choose from. So a lot of it tends to be like only tabletop in like XYZ positions or like incline in these positions. But my goal is in the next one to really be able to break it down and give you a bigger variety. So people aren't stuck in the same position during all of their core exercises, especially when we have some of the workouts where we have like 6 or 8 different core stations. It's like, I don't want to do the same bird dog over and over again, even though that's such a good one. So yes, that's so good. And I think meeting with people before, after class is just exquisite. It's so good. And I will make sure I get Anna the video so that you can send it out, show people what pregnancy core engagement could look like.